and welcome to a new episode of Hello World. Today we're going to speak about the importance of customer discovery in innovation. So over the last couple of years, we all know that customers have increased their power. I mean, it's basically just a click away and you choose what it is you want to buy and not buy. And if you're not happy, you just move on. And for many companies, if you work within consumer goods, that's sort of been the natural part. They're always on understanding the customer and so on. But I think with the digital transformation and the customer's increasing power, this has started to become a thing for B2B companies as well. So we're seeing an increasing interest in trying to understand what are the customer's needs, what are they struggling with, and what is it they want to achieve. And basically, this is what designers have always worked with. They also always try to, understand the customer journeys and then try the best way to deliver either services or products. So I think that's also why it's sort of now this area is called sort of design thinking. So this is what we're going to speak about today. And with us we have Todd Dunn, who is Vice President of Innovation at Atrium Health in North Carolina. And Todd has worked for many years with innovation and is very much into customer discovery. So he has had the opportunity to join forces with many of the famous strategists and authors of books like Alexander Osterwalder, Steve Blank, Bob Moesta, and so on. So we look very much forward to welcome him to the show and to be able to share his experiences. So welcome to the show, Todd.
Thank you. Good morning. And good afternoon to you.
So, Todd, I started getting into this already 2011, actually, and I know you said the same. That's at the time when Alexander Osterwalder came with his first book about the business model canvas, which was, to me, sort of an aha feeling, at least. And you said that already in 2012, you met Steve Blank, and Steve Blank was actually working on his book about customer discovery and development and lean startup in the startup owner's manual. And you actually approached him and said, hey, you know what, I have a case where we can see how we can apply this in real life. At that time you were working at GE, General Electric, and you were trying to see how can we implement sort of the startup methodology in a real enterprise. So could you share a bit of that experience and learning from that project?
Yeah, what's funny is the first book I read from Steve was 4 Steps to the Epiphany. And I read that in late 2009 because a friend of mine and I were talking. He was into it. And I was like, hey, who do you read? Who do you learn from besides Clay? And he said, this guy named Steve Blank. You got to go to steveblank.com. And so in late 2009, I ordered Steve's book that he wrote in 2008. What have I really learned from trying to apply the methods is that I think the methods are applicable in large corporations and in small startups because they're really principally based and there's a lot of rigor to driving better decisions. And I've also discovered that it's more of a skill set that's teachable than I thought it was initially. I thought it took kind of the crazy-minded like us who love to try new things and do it. But I've also found that the rigor of, say, Alex's tools and methods and Clay's theory and Steve's relentless rigor around evidence is really a great bridge from an innovator to an operator.
Yeah.
And that if innovators have really good systems of rigor that drive better decisions around where you invest more time or money, that's really key. And I think those were the kind of light bulb moments for me, Kim. It's just like I remember the first time I saw Alex's book, it's like, what is this thing? It's just, and from there, just the applicability of it and the necessity of it in innovation are the kind of the light bulb moments for me from doing it in real projects.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, as we're talking about now, books, etc. What we have seen the last 10 years, lots of books have been written within this topic, as well. Lots of tools have been developed.
Yeah.
Some of them are, for example, business model generation canvas and value proposition canvas. Yeah. Kim, you are in love in both of them.
They're really good.
Well,
yeah,
Todd.
I think Todd is as well.
You have them on your wall home in your living room.
Maybe not, but still.
And another canvas or a method could be jobs to be done, etc. But still innovation not happening on a large scale in companies. We see lots of companies, they're doing lots of innovative activities, but they don't establish an innovative way of being in the organization. So Todd, why is it like that?
That is a thought-provoking question. I think it is because one view that I have, one point of view, is that innovators have just wanted operators to just get it, trust us, let us go do it. It's been more of a little bit of a friction approach, and I think the innovators have just felt the operators, well, we got to innovate or we're going to die, so you should just give budget, time, and scale to this. And I think to some degree, as innovators, we've missed it. We've missed an opportunity that's still there, frankly, to walk in and say, this is our system of innovating that will drive great outcomes, but we also know how to de-risk it. I think the stories of failure, of big failures like Theranos and these other, unicorns that just blew up, scare the operators and the financial teams, because I think they felt that there wasn't enough evidence to keep spending money, that it was hype. And so I think innovators haven't done a great job to take a playbook in, to say, look, we learn fast, we learn cheap, but we have a system to help innovate that's customer driven. So you de-risk it at the same time, but you're still innovating. And I think that's why we haven't seen on a broad scale companies do this at scale systematically. It's because the innovators aren't putting together that succinct story of how it ought to work.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't think we're lacking in tools, really. It's just about applying them. Yeah.
Yeah, there's too many tools, really. I think another thing, too, is we might over-design things, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you really need to design it to where it's within reach, especially initially in your change management efforts, that the tools and the concepts are within reach and that they like radical sense making in plain English.
Yep.
And I think we have to think of it more as a 3, 5, 7 year journey than creating an innovation effort and going fast, like the fail fast, fail cheap thing, which I don't agree with. I think that's part of it, is we need to make it within reach and not make it so complicated that people believe it's mystique. I've been thinking lately that we need to take the mystique and the mystery out of innovation and make it far more of a professional approach that drives innovation, but it's not mystical to people.
No. And I mean, it's actually funny because, I mean, to start with, you work with customer discovery. And customer discovery is really just about speaking to people and asking, what is it you're trying to solve? What are you struggling with? What is it you want to achieve? And so on. And it's, when I worked with a couple of our clients, I must say one of the best moments I've had as customer experience has been when they've sort of understood that, oh, I can speak to my clients. They're not really scared of me. They're accessible. And they're sharing so much, and in just 1 hour, I've learned more than I maybe learned in a couple of years.
Absolutely.
Which is kind of scary because you've been producing and developing tools for an end user who you've maybe never met, which is sort of weird. Yeah. But it's really, really easy, actually. And I know that you've worked a lot with customer discovery hands-on, both where you're now and where at your previous jobs. Could you share a bit how do you work? How do you get people involved in this? How do you recruit people to sort of help discover the needs?
Oh, great question. We really struggled with it initially to make it within reach. So we decided to I have this fundamental belief that empathy and curiosity are the great foundations of innovation. Be empathetic enough to the progress your consumer wants to make that you would never want to design something they didn't like. And I think we have to flip the lens a little bit to go from requirements document thinking to delighter documents. Like, let's make the flip. Like, if we were to think about we have to delight the consumer, what would change in our behavior? So what we really did is we would bring teams in, for instance. There was one team, and this is an interesting maybe story because it's not about a product, it's more about an internal service back to a group. But we had a team of HR partners who had a roadmap of the things that they needed to do during their year. What they didn't know if that is what their customer really needed them to do.
Yeah.
So we took the jobs theory, and we really boiled it down to one simple page. And we tried to use Bob's forces diagram for a while, but what we said is, look, go out and spend 2 days over the next month or two in your consumer circumstances. So we taught people about the jobs theory, but we gave them a very simple observational sheet and interview record sheet, struggles and surprises, yeah? And we agreed on a research question. What's the most important progress you need to make this year for your organization? And that was really what they were going to discover. And we trained them for 90 minutes. That's it, hour and a half. And we gave them a little bit of a communication to send out to their customers. This is inside the hospital system. And they went and they spent a couple days, over 6 weeks. We brought them back. We took and we put all the, we did Alex, we did post everywhere. And then we started doing what we call the KJ method, the affinitization method, and come to find out what the priorities were for their internal customers was not what the priorities were for their team. And so we use that exercise literally to help them plan out their roadmap for the year to serve their customers. A very interesting way, frankly, to do customer discovery, because it was more about discovering what they were struggling with and what they needed this team to serve them to help them accomplish. Wasn't around a product really, is more around how do we guide and organize our team. But it was out, to your point, in the field, discovering the jobs, the progress that their customers wanted to make. And literally an hour and a half training, a couple hour like affinitization work, and then go do. It was more about let's go make an impact and let's not try to make it perfect.
Yeah, because I think that's important as well. Because I mean, if you take companies like Procter & Gamble and so on, they have whole teams that basically move in with people for a weekend or whatever. I mean, for a business-to-business company, that's not the first step you're going to take. But if you really try to boil down, just meeting a couple of customers, asking really simple questions, observing how they work, you can come so far with just that.
I agree with you, and exactly it is. Just start simply. Say, okay, pick 5 customers who you know would really appreciate you spending a day or two with them in their context, in their staff meetings, maybe on a sales call. Just go ride with them. Tell them you're just going to write down some things that you're looking for struggles. Yeah. You're looking for ways that you can, innovate to help them in their day. And I've never found someone who wasn't willing to accept that type of collaborative work.
Yeah.
But I have to ask both of you, because you are in these situations, you can always win a discussion by entering it and say, what are the clients say about this? And often you get the answer, we haven't talked to them.
Yeah.
And then when you're saying to the customer, why don't we talk to them? Should we invite them, etc.? The customer say, it's like an aha experience.
Yeah.
So why is it so difficult for companies to involve customers? Are they afraid of them, or do they think that their product is so good so they don't have to ask the customers? All companies isn't Apple, because Steve Jobs always said,
of course.
You don't have to ask the customers because we know what the customer need. So what's the major reason?
You know what I think is interesting about that, and I believe you nailed it. I think Steve Jobs' quote, that people don't know what they want, might have been one of the wisest and most misunderstood comments ever, because I actually ran into this, by the way. In one of my companies, a person was sitting down writing a requirements for a big system. I asked him what he was doing. He said, well, I'm writing requirements for this platform. I said, how can you write the requirements for the platform? You don't do the job. And he said, well, the customer doesn't know what they want. And I said, well, you're not Steve Jobs. And but if everybody looks at the practice and the mindset of Apple, if we just stick with that, customer obsession was in their blood.
Yeah.
Steve would go watch people eat dinner, right? I mean, there's all these things of where Apple employees would go out into the wild and understand What Steve really, I think, was saying, people don't know the design of the product that they want, but people certainly know the progress that they're trying to make. And by understanding them in their context, you can discover that. But don't ask them to give you the design of the product to satisfy their progress. Work with them to understand what they're trying to do, and you design the product to help them make the progress. And I think if we would have framed it that way, we would have a very different culture around the way we think about consumers, because to some degree, people took it as Steve being derogatory.
Yep.
It clearly, his product is so good, he wasn't being derogatory toward people. He was just saying, you can't put the burden on them to describe what you should design for them. What you need to do is put the burden on you to discover the progress they want to make and what's preventing them from doing it. And that, your question really brings up a lot of thoughts in my mind. I've thought about this forever. People say that, and I'm like, don't say that. People don't know design. That's your job.
Yeah.
They know what they're trying to accomplish. So think about them from that perspective, empathetically, designed to help them make progress.
Yeah.
So if we leave one of my favorite companies for a second.
By the way, I do love Apple products. I do.
I can hear that. I can hear that. Yes.
Well, but I think you bring up a great point, though. So if you think about Apple, think about Intuit. They have thrived for a decade because they had a program called Design for Delight. Now they call it Customer Obsession.
Yeah.
Amazon, Customer Obsession. Procter & Gamble, they used to call their program Living It and Working It, but what their real strategy now is called superiority. In your mind and in your behavior, that is what will tell them if they have a product that's superior or not. So to some degree, it's about a strategy that's consumer oriented and then cascading that through a company to really make it happen. But I think that's why Apple products are so great, is that they want you to love their product.
Yeah. I really like that you are mentioning the Amazon customer obsession. Can't you give us that example once again that we talked about some days ago when it's about packaging products in boxes at Amazon and the non-friction when it comes to electronic equipments and what they need to use them and so on?
Yeah, there's an article written by a really top-notch, top-tier venture fund here, First Round Capital, about Amazon's friction point killing process. So they think about any friction in the buying process. And one example that they used was when you buy a device that requires batteries, let's say a remote control car. Typically on the box of the actual car, it says batteries not included. In the box, Amazon has batteries. It removes a friction point of the experience in buying and using the product. If you have ever done the one swipe buy, there's no friction.
No.
Like, the only friction is when the bill comes, and so that's not really what they're trying to solve for. And so the way I think the reason that's really important is I actually think it's an empathetic stance. Don't make it hard for me to work with you. And in Bob Mesta's way of thinking about it, there's what they call the big hire. That's the purchasing moment. And then there's the little hire, and that's all the experiences before and after, but especially after the delivery, the support, the use of the product. And I think so many companies focus on the big hire moment because that's the revenue moment, but they forget to design for all of the little hire moments and remove friction out of that.
Yeah.
And I think when you think in terms of a product, I think we can't think about it in terms of a movie trailer. I think we have to think about it in terms of a documentary.
Yeah.
And everything that could happen with that product along the documentary and designed to make all those experiences delightful, because word of mouth is probably more powerful than marketing anyway, than traditional marketing. You have to design want them to talk about your product.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why we are going to buy all our Christmas gifts from Amazon, though they are in Sweden since a month ago or something. I have one last question for you, Todd. You mentioned it a little bit earlier. When it comes to investing in innovative initiatives, you said something about that is often questioned and stopped on a C-level. The managers are asking for ROI figures or some kind of business cases. So what's your advice to these companies and managers to get on track and go forward within this? You have also been talking about the risk and de-risking and so on.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think we need to have a learning plan. I'm really keen on a learning plan that involves the jobs theory. But if it's okay, I'll take just a minute and explain why I think this is important. A theory, in my opinion, is a humble stance toward understanding a problem. A theory basically says, I don't know, but I have a construct through which I'm going to learn. And so if we were to admit, I don't really know what the consumer is trying to do, what progress they're trying to make. I know what they say, but what people say and what people do is not what they say they do, because that's just not the way the brain works. It's not because people are not being genuine or that they're lying to you. It's just people can't describe what they're doing in their day-to-day life. So I would say we're going to go to the consumer, we're going to learn through a framework. And let's say it is the jobs lens, because people are multidimensional, but it says they're making functional, social, and emotional progress and we don't really understand it, but here's the plan to go learn with them. To your earlier point, we're going to go spend a few days in the consumer's context. We're going to train, let's say, 10 customer salespeople or whatever the title is in your company. We're going to teach them this framework and then they're going to go spend time in the field. I would tell them to do that, to start there on an understanding sprint. We call it structured understanding. And then I would have them, just like you would do the scientific method, frankly, use the canvas not in thinking about being wed to the tool, but about being wed to admitting that you don't know. And do what I call an assumption burst. Just write down every assumption you can possibly think of and then bucket it into the canvas and design experiments. The reason that I think that's important for a team that's wanting to get funding to do things is they can go to the operators who typically hold the budgets and they can say, look, we realize we don't know a lot. So what we're asking for is, let's say we need a little time and we need a little budget, and these are the things we're going to go learn. If we learn these things, then we're going to come back and ask for a larger number because it'll give us evidence to invest more money. And then basically you're going through design work, design thinking, but you're doing it in a structured way to say, look, we believe there's going to be a great ROI, but we're going to de-risk the amount of time and money we have to spend to get there. Because if you believe the research that says 90-something% of products never meet expectations of the consumer or the company, or like every good idea and every bad idea looks exactly the same on the first day, then I think the burden on an innovation team is to show that learning plan and the tools that they're going to do, and it will give them an enormous amount of credibility. That's the way we approach it. We call it design for impact, and we have under design for impact what we call structured understanding, and it's customer sprints. We have methods under the customer sprints. We literally map out the business model assumptions that it will take to deliver the value. And we say, these are the experiments we're going to run, and we want 3 months to do it.
Yeah. And I think the point is very much as well is de-risking, understanding that we are doing things to de-risk and that innovation is not just cost.
It's like, you remember Alex's slide? It's this simple little slide where it has 2 lines, yeah?
Yeah.
And it talks money you spend early and the level of risk, and he's got this little squiggly line in the first half of the slide. It might be one of the best designed slides because what you're saying is, look, early we want to spend the smallest amount of money and de-risk this as much as possible. A lot of people talk about that. I don't know that a lot of teams go with a specific learning plan and playbook to the CFO or the operators to say, we're going to go learn. We're going to fill up your innovation pipeline. This is how we're going to do it. We're not asking for bunch of money. We're asking for permission to go learn in a new way, and this is how we do it. I really think that rigor is, it's more required now than ever, especially after COVID, because a lot of companies have been negatively impacted, right?
Yeah, they need to be more innovative. So finally, if you would give an advice to C-level, if they want to be more innovative than they are today, what are the sort of 3 most important steps they need to do?
I think one, you have to accept the value that your company delivers today will not cause you to win in a year.
Yep.
It's a big assumption. You just have to embrace, what Andy Grove at Intel had, really this healthy paranoia. I think it's important to look 5 years out and back, go out to what you really believe you want your value to be as a company, and back into it. And then I think it's really important that the C-suite supports a systematic approach to innovation and frankly demands it.
Yep.
Demand it and put it into your leadership imperatives of the behaviors that you want your leaders to do at all levels and types of innovation. And I guess if I had more time, I could articulate that a bit better, but I truly believe it. Don't believe you're going to win tomorrow because you won today.
Yep.
Change that mindset. Look 5 years out to try to see the trends, and as Rita McGrath would say, the inflection points. Look for those patterns of things, and then what you believe the vision of your company ought to be based on what you believe your vision of your consumer is going to be. And the third one is put a system in place. Demand it. Make innovation a really tight profession that has the tools, the language, and the rigor versus kind of a sideshow. Figure out how to bring innovation into the DNA of the company.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Todd, for sharing your knowledge and experience. It's been truly great to speak to you.
Thank you.
And let's keep in touch.
We will. Good to see you both. Have a delightful weekend. And as always, I'm honored to spend time with you and learn from you as well. So let's please keep in touch.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 So yet another learning. I love Hello World. It's so great to be able to speak to so many different people.
Yeah, you are reading so many books, you and Todd.
Yes.
And you're always mentioning Alexander as a name.
Yeah.
And
Alex.
Can you say Alex? Can you say his last name again? Because
Osterwalder.
Osterwalder, yes.
Exactly. He just released a 4th book actually, which is it's really the essence of the other 3 books. So
and what's the name of that?
It's the Invincible Company.
Okay.
So it's really building the Invincible Company based on innovation, having portfolios of innovation projects, and learning to see patterns and decide along the way as you get evidence, just as Todd said. How do you act? Do you spin off? Do you continue? Do you sell? Do you stop? And so on.
When will you and Todd write your first book?
I don't know. I'll have to speak to him about it. But it's really fun and interesting to hear. And I got tons of idea for the business proposal that I'm working on for a customer next week. So that was good.
All right.
Yeah, great. So thank you so much for joining today as well. And remember to follow us on LinkedIn so you don't miss any Hello World episodes and of course any knowledge. So see you around. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.